My name's Hannah Nicklin. I'm not going to be deadpan and performancey, don't worry. I'm wearing a bag because that's got the mic in it, in case you think that I'm ready to flee. This is not a true thing. I'm the new resident speaker at VideoBrains, and I am totally excited about that. I really hope that you're going to be interested and excited by the things that I have to tell you over the next 6 months. I'm going to be here every VideoBrains, and I'm doing a particular project with this. I thought I've got 6 different talks to do. Instead of doing 6 unrelated talks, how about I come up with a series, a way to make the most of the opportunity to do 6 talks in a row. So a thing that I'm doing is a psychogeography of games. I will explain what that is in a second. Just to let you know, I'm a theatre maker, a game designer, a poet, and today I am starting the series with Kentucky Route Zero. It is okay if you have not played Kentucky Route Zero. The things I'm going to say, they're not spoilers, and they're also not things that you necessarily really need to have played the game to understand, but you might then enjoy playing the game once you've understood the things that I'm going to say. So just to reassure anyone who hasn't played it, that's fine. We're also not going to stare at you. So this is part of a series of talks that I'm doing called A Psychogeography of Games. If you like it, this series, you can help me by backing on Patreon. It's just patreon.com/Hannah Nicklin. It costs a bit of money because what I'm doing is that I'm going on a series of walks. A series of walks with different game designers that I love and I'm interested in the work of. This one is a walk I went on with Jake Elliott of Kentucky Route Zero. I'm also going on a walk with Kerry Turner, who runs Brighton Indies, amongst other things, Holly Gramazio, who makes amazing things in both real and digital space, Ed Key, who's over there somewhere.
He also does cool things.
Yes, he also does cool things. He's currently foraging for like ferns or something right now. George Buckingham, who is also handily here, who'll talk to you later about bots. Presumably. He likes bots. And Laura Dreamfield, who was recently won, what award did she win? The Amaze. She's super great and makes really cool stuff. Let me, just before I totally begin, tell you what psychogeography is. Psychogeography is a big, chewy word put together by some drunk French guys in 1955 to talk about how the landscape of our lives affects how we feel, think, and act. And I'm particularly interested in how the geography of our lives affects how we design games, how it affects the geography of our games, or the psychogeography of our games, which is why I'm in front of you today. So over the next 6 months, I'm going to go for walks with these 6 game designers in places that are important to them, that they feel have affected their work somehow. The first one today is about a walk I went on with Jake Elliott of Kentucky Route Zero, except that because I don't fly for the environment and also am poor, the first walk happened in 2 different continents. What we did is we spoke on the phone and over email, and I asked him about where he likes to walk and what he's interested in. And as you'll find out later on in the text, he really likes a place called Peddler's Mall, which is a flea market not too far from him. So we decided on the same day, at the same time, local, we'd go to a local flea market, buy $10 worth of things and post them to one another, and then have a discussion about those things and also how where we go affects what we make. So that's where I am in front of you right today. I'm going to read the story of what happened. Okay, so that was the introduction. I'm on top of the slides, people. The 1403 to Dalston Junction arrives at 1406. On the train, I half listened to a podcast about sandhogs, the men and women who dug the Lincoln Tunnel in New York. I read an article where a teacher defends a letter sent to parents threatening to report them to social services if they let their children play 18-rated games. One parent thinks 18 is a difficulty rating and is therefore proud that their child can play Call of Duty. Writing this now, I remember my mum being proud that I could play a board game with an older difficulty rating, and I think everyone could probably do better at communicating. I get off at Shoreditch High Street Station. It's a new build, all high concrete ceilings, bold edges and vending machines shrunken by the width of the ticket hall. I frown at Box Park and its limited edition shop fronts, then turn right under the railway lines. Less than 200 metres on from those shiny shop fronts, a Tower Hamlets branded litter bin overflows. 2 homeless men talk, sat on a discarded mattress. My podcast is long finished, but I leave my headphones in. I nearly walk past the entrance to the market. It's thresholded by Mac and Fred Perry stores in a subtle navy blue. And I worry again that not knowing London well enough yet, I've chosen a Disneyland of a market, like Greenwich or Borough. But on entering, I find cobbles and stalls covered in sedimentary layers of knickknacks. I breathe out. It's okay. So Jake and I, we talk over email to begin with. He's eager to be involved, and we begin to talk about where he likes to walk where he lives, which is outside Elizabethtown in Kentucky. Kentucky is a large state. I type this and I think about the banality of that statement. All states are large to me. I come from the second largest county in England, but I can cycle across it in less than half a day. It would take 30 hours to cycle across Kentucky, crossing one time zone. Where Jake lives in Kentucky, it's largely flat farmland. There's not really a way away from his house without using a car. There's a wood you can walk through, but without a car, you can't really get anywhere. Jake can't drive. Jake's favourite place to walk, he tells me, is Peddler's Mall, a flea market on the site of an old Walmart in Elizabethtown that his wife sometimes drives him to. We decide that the walk we will go on the same day, will be through our local flea markets. I choose Spitalfields and he heads to Peddler's Mall. On the 2nd of April, on both sides of the Atlantic, we sift through the layers of pre-owned miscellany and choose 8 items between us, posting them to one another in the days following. My package from Jake is still stuck in Chicago. On April the 10th, 2015, 3:19 a.m., the parcel arrived at the USPS facility in Louisville, Kentucky. 19 hours and 17 minutes later, it departed the USPS facility in Louisville and arrived on the 11th of April 2015 at 8:34 p.m. in Chicago, Illinois. There it has remained. We talk over Skype on the 11th of May, 10 p.m. British summertime, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Jake tells me about his wife driving them to the Peddler's Mall, about hoping that their 3-year-old will fall asleep in the back on the way. He tells me about the run-down car park with weeds growing up between the concrete, the shell of the Walmart in which the Peddler's Mall now sits, each booth unmanned and items tagged with a unique serial number. He talks to me about the landscape that stands strongest in his childhood, the redwoods of Sacramento, where his grandparents bought a place with the intention of making an off-grid refuge ready for the collapse of society. I tell him about sitting in my kitchen in Lincolnshire when I was 3 or 4, colouring in the contours of a map, red, yellow and green, depending on where would flood when the ice melted. He tells me of the 3-hour car journey from Elizabethtown to Nashville, Tennessee with his wife and sister. He says, the landscape here is really amazing to me. There's parts of it where you get away from any of the major cities. Some of the more mountainous parts of it, they're totally intoxicating. I think back to the only time I've ever visited America. Sat in the rear left passenger seat with a taste of dust and sugar and heat on the air. Jake explains that the germ of the idea for Kentucky Route Zero was in this passenger journey with his wife and sister. Travelling on these highways, he says, being on the road for most of the game, and then the other part was this truck, like driving one of these trucks, delivery trucks, and specifically the idea that you could live in the truck, you know, that they're kind of big enough that you could kind of live in them, so you're bringing this building around with you. Also, the sense of being a passenger is important to Jake. He says, a lot of the game feels like you're sort of a passenger to me. You don't know where you're headed exactly, not just for you, but the characters don't know where they're headed. Also because they accept it when people tell them to go places, even kind of strange places. I can't drive. I think of sitting in the passenger seat of an orange Mini. Technically, the colour is Mini Gold. I'm told this several times. I think of the leather bucket seats and the computer that we built together, the touchscreen nestled in the central pillar of the dashboard. I think of dark nights in Leicestershire where I would scroll through Winamp and bring up soft electronic music voiced by Benjamin Gibbard. The sub that replaced the boot hums and I can smell the heat on our skin. So the people who came up with the word psychogeography, they talked about another thing called détournement. It's a French word, and it sort of is a thing they invented. It means a playful reclaiming of the edifices of capitalism. Ways of joyfully remaking the world on our own terms. Who says this is how you should use a street, or a building, or a chair? Who says we have to move at this speed? Have you ever noticed how streets are designed to drive us into shops? Did you know that Paris has such wide boulevards precisely to stop barricade building from ever happening again? Who owns this land? Who are the public? Exactly. I have a friend who was once thrown out of the Bullring shopping centre in Birmingham for sitting on a bench and reading a book. Another French dude called Baudrillard, he talked in 1981 about the way the media replaces what is with the way that things appear. And that after a while, we think about things as the way they appear and forget about what they actually are. A moment becomes a photograph. A moment only is a moment if it's photographed. In 1946, someone called Hannah Arendt talked about the disrupted scale of the modern world. She said things were torn out of their functional context. So the city evicts us from a human scale. Motor travel evicts us from a human pace. Our mobile phones and MP3 players today evict us from the need to seek nearby human interaction. Contextless, the contemporary citizen passes through, quote, frictionless passageways designed as conduits, or simply so vast or alien, they've lost contact with human proportion. In Kentucky Route Zero, Xanadu says, it's like a real place. They pick up garbage, they deliver mail, they go to work and to church, but it has an awful kind of emptiness. The characters in Kentucky Route Zero, they're not only missing their functional context, they kind of forgot they were looking for it in the first place. They live lives of in-between. Delivery drivers, artists working desk jobs, boys who have lost their family, scientists tuning televisions in and out of static, all wandering a landscape of pre-used places. Jake says that a pretty consistent motif in the game is space that used to be something else. If you're trying to do forensics on a space and figure out what it maybe used to have meant or used to have mean, he says it's a bit about the politics of reclaiming it, about squatting, but it's also about the politics of the mega corporation side, where a company will raise a neighborhood and build something else. The battle between the human and the superhuman scale. Those are the political tensions that we have in mind, he says, working with the idea of reclaiming and also debt and homelessness, having been displaced from your home. It's meant to be something that's going on in the lives of these characters. All of them wandering a landscape of pre-owned spaces. The dialogue in Kentucky Route Zero kills me. It's so delicate. It's so perfect, so evocative, not in just the fact of it, but in the elegance of the choice of it. The art and animation, Jake describes how that doesn't allow the player control of the camera. But much more interesting to me is how the dialogue doesn't often allow the player camera control either. Dialogue borrowed from the future, wandering a museum as you hear choices remembered and reported by the people you encounter. Dialogue shifting between owners. The typical hero fizzes and fades and you're retuned to the angle of one of his co-adventurers. The characterization is pre-owned by the writer. Jake describes specifically how it's important for him not what the player chooses, but that they see the choices, all of the ways of being the character that the player guides. I buy Jake a metallic tipper toy truck with genuine tipping motion. The cab is a worn reddish colour. Jake buys me a beer bottle from a long extinct brewery. It reads Falls City on the label. I buy Jake a small enamel pin, a red image of the UK on a white background and blue border. The gold lettering marks the wearer as belonging to the National Federation of Retail Newsagents, Booksellers and Stationers. Jake buys me a book on paranormal psychic travel and past lives, titled Mysteries of the Unknown Psychic Voyages. I buy Jake a tiny clay drake, unfired, painted with poster paint, with an even tinier thumb and finger modelled yellow duckling that fits snug into the drake's back. Jake buys me what at first seemed like an old yellowed local newspaper, which turns out to be a leaflet advertising Hardin, Kentucky. The front page boasts a vibrant theatre scene. I buy Jake an 1899 reprint in the original French of Alexandre Dumas's Expression de Voyage Suisse. Green cover, elastic band holding the loose leaves broken binding together. I Google Translate the first chapter for him. I begin to ask Jake about the zero. I feel the energy leach out of him. I change tack. I'm not interested in what it means, I explain. You must be pretty bored of that. And I can hear him nod. I ask him where it came from, if there's a place that he thinks of when he thinks about the zero. Jake's answer is with him straight away. A 5-day bus trip from Seattle to New Orleans. Around 2,500 miles if you take a direct route. Not a place exactly, but he says it felt like one. Because people would come and go. You would be on the bus with maybe the same 30 or 40 people for a day, and some of them would filter off as they reach their destination, and others would get on board. All these different overlapping trips, no regard for the time of day. You could stop and it would be time to eat lunch or something. Then 3 a.m. in the middle of Texas and there's nothing around but beetles and a gas station. No sense of time, getting on and off the bus, and never being off the bus for more than half an hour. There was no going to bed ever. So it became this very surreal experience, very supernatural. That's how I feel about the zero. You're kind of half asleep but very grounded. You're still eating and going to the bathroom and negotiating on other people's boundaries, but dreamlike. I ask him what the taste of the zero is, and he says gas station coffee. Really poor coffee. It's been sitting on the burner for 12 hours. When we travel, we are in between home and a destination, in between who we were and who we're going to be, are traveling now. In a lot of ways, being able to sit back into the flow of that place, that in between, that thing that you are when you're not that person that's arrived or that person that left. Of places like the zero, that's a place where you can do new thinking, where you can reflect, look, see. The landscape of Kentucky Route Zero is heavy with the scale of the United States, but it is also heavy with the landscape of our lives, our generation's lives. It's Homer's Odyssey for a generation who can't remember a time before capitalism won. It's debt and mouldy whiskey, transcendent gigs on sticky floors, computers that break you and are broken. It is the songs that your parents and their friends used to sing, lost houses, forgetting that owning a house was a thing. It's a contemporary homelessness. People you travel with and you feel like you might travel with to the ends of the earth until they are suddenly gone. Jake's favourite thing out of the things that I bought him were the ducks and the truck. The heavy clink of the truck permeates our Skype conversation, and he says that he has the 2 ducks sat in the truck. My parcel from Jake is still travelling. Thank you.